Here's a man with great respect for on this station. Delighted to have him on. He costs enough. Rear Admiral Chris Parry, former NATO and Royal Navy commander. Hello, sir. How are you?
Yeah, hi, Jeremy. Good evening.
Oh, right, let's do the serious bit and then we'll have a bitch. Literally in the last hour, Hamas says it's suspending the release of further Israeli hostages. I think these were 3 a week. That was part of the ceasefire agreement. Now, there had been, Chris, various stories and rumours of the ceasefire being broken. I don't know if it was on one side or both sides. You'll have to fill me in more. But what's your response to this breaking news?
Well, it strikes me on previous hostage releases, they're trying to fatten them up a bit before they release them because they clearly haven't looked after them. They've abused them. And the PR disaster that's occurring for Hamas means they've got to try and recalibrate what they're doing. I think the ceasefire is being broken on both sides, but I'm afraid to say that's what happens when you have a very ragged border, which is easily penetratable on both sides. If Hamas attack Israel, they're going to attack back. I think Hamas are playing a very dangerous game because if they don't hold to the ceasefire terms, they're going to find air attacks coming in again and disrupting the rehabilitation of Gaza.
Well, this was just breaking news now, actually, right on time for you. Israel has just called the decision a complete violation of the ceasefire deal, which began last month, of course. Defence Minister Israel Katz says, I've instructed the IDF to prepare at the highest level of alert for any possible scenario inside Gaza. Chris, you're we're a senior military man. There's 2 schools of thought, and I get whatever people say and criticise me, I completely understand as much as I can, right? I don't talk about it away from this show, but the scenes in Gaza are atrocious and revolting and wrong. War, I remember you saying this to me a couple of years ago, is ugly and revolting and vile and heinous, and that's a fact, I'm afraid, of war. We can argue, you know, why do you negotiate with terrorists? This started on October the 7th, or we can say, look, this has been going on for years and the Palestinians have these rights and the Israelis have these rights. But, I mean, this whole area, this whole war is so, to me, they did this ceasefire. I don't mean to be cynical. I never thought it would hold. And I never understood, and you're a military man, how Israel gets 3 hostages and Palestine get 200 murderers from prisons. I'm not sticking up for anybody in that argument. I don't want to have that argument. I mean, I was touched beyond... I mean, did you see the story of the guy, one of the 3 that was freed at the weekend, only discovered when he came out that his wife and 2 teenage daughters had been murdered on October the 7th? The man, the pictures before he was taken, as you alluded to when he was released, appalling. Have we forgot that these people are terrorists in our quest to just tell the world that there's a ceasefire happening?
Yeah, well, Jeremy, we've discussed this before. I've always been sceptical about ceasefire unless you know what's going to happen afterwards. Yeah. Whenever Jeremy Corbyn and these other lunatics call for a ceasefire, all they're saying is, let's stop Israel from winning the war. Unless you actually come up with a plan for saying what's going to happen after the ceasefire, you're no better off than people who want the war to continue. Now, the fact of life is, we know how Hamas operates. We know that they're inhuman. They're not actually dealing on the rational level as far as we're concerned. And we saw when the hostages were released, we saw women being mobbed by thousands of very predatory males without a squeak, I'm afraid, from the left-wingers and the do-gooders and the non-governmental organisations. This is absolutely barbaric, and we have to understand that these are the people that Israel are having to deal with to get over their national trauma, and I'm afraid to say that you can't be even-handed in these circumstances.
Do you believe this war, again, not using dangerous logic, trying to report it as it happens? 45 minutes ago, we discovered that Hamas is saying we're not doing this anymore. They didn't allude to why. Israel's just come back and said it's a complete violation. Do you think the war will start back up again? Do you think it's never stopped? What do you as an experienced military man think the next few days, weeks and months look like on the Gaza Strip?
Well, whenever I used to look at these things, I used to look at what outcomes people want. Right now, Hamas is not actually putting forward any outcome that leads to a lasting peace. They're just asking to be attacked again. But
what do you say if I balance it, which I have to do? How do you answer the fact that many of us were brought up believing that the Israelis would always call for a two-state solution, OK? And one of the first things Netanyahu said after October the 7th, that's now off the table. What's the alternative? Where are these Palestinian people supposed to go? Because Egypt and Jordan, nobody else wants to take them. So what are they supposed to do? Serious question.
Well, OK, let's start with they've only been Palestinians since the 1960s. They used to live in Jordan. They used to live in Egypt. This is a totally confected nationality. The two-state solution is over, Jeremy. There's no way that Israel can ever trust people with the strategic depth, lack of strategic depth that they've got. My sense, and this is me as a military man, is that somehow the people in Gaza are going to have to be incorporated into another state. Now, either that is Egypt or it's Jordan. Now, Jordan perhaps could say, look, we used to have the West Bank, we can take over Jordan. Unless these people take over Gaza, unless these people are incorporated into a normalized state, they're going to continue to be the cancer, I'm afraid, that is killing peace in the Middle East.
What did you make of Donald Trump's? I mean, he's doubled down on it today. He's doubled down on his argument that actually, I should take it over. You can all go away for a couple of years. I'm going to rebuild it, and then you can come back. I mean, is that him at his most ludicrous, or has he got a point there?
Jeremy, you and I both know from his book, The Rules of the Game, he says, look, I'll show you something with my right hand. I'll draw attention to it. It's going to be absolutely outrageous, and you won't see what I'm doing with my left hand. The key play in Gaza is to keep the Chinese out from doing peacekeeping and also doing all the rebuilding as well. That will give them a massive colony on the eastern Mediterranean shore. That's what the Americans are trying to avoid. OK,
that's Hamas, that's Gaza with the latest breaking news. Now, put your balanced, well, you've always got a balanced hat on. You were the Rear Admiral. I mean, that's pretty bloody high. You rose up, you're like very proper important. How do you respond, Rear Admiral Chris Parry, to the news today that Gen Z, I don't know, how old is Gen Z, by the way? Can somebody shout in my ear? No, nobody knows. No, yeah. No, he's just pushed a button. I don't know how. You double check, right?
It's 1990 onwards, Jeremy.
Brilliant. OK, fine. So the guest knows and we do. 1997 onwards. Half of Generation Z think that Britain is a racist country, and only a tenth, i.e. 90%, would not risk their lives to defend this nation at war. What is your response as a military man? I was interested by James Price, who said it's very easy to attack these kids, but this is how they have been taught in schools and the education system in the last 25 years.
Yeah, they've been very suggestible. I'm afraid James would have to acknowledge the Conservatives did absolutely nothing about it.
Yeah.
And whenever I went into schools, they were very pleased to see me, and they always say, oh, crikey, we didn't expect you to be like this. And I'd say, no, look, I'm not interested in war. It's a real pension trap. That's the first thing. But let me be honest about this. I talk to a lot of students, people in that sort of generation, and I say to them, what would you do if somebody attacked your family or your village or your town? And they go, well, we'd fight. And I'd say, well, actually, it's much better fighting over there than fighting over here. And the fact of life is, Jeremy, if we have missiles landing in Kent instead of on Kiev right now, this generation will be just as signed up to protecting their families, their homes, their livelihoods and things like that. You've only got to say to people, do you really want to be in a position that the people of Ukraine are in? And I think they come pretty fast round. And if it all fails, Jeremy, there's always the press gang.
Do you believe, I mean, I'm going to tell a story, I don't want to talk out of school, but one of my daughters was telling me about a lecture the other day where the lecturer quite literally said, most world wars have been started by the British, and the British Army is this and the British Army is that. And no, you're shaking your head. I mean, if it comes from there, are they to blame? I mean, I started the show by calling them a bunch of, entitled idiots. But if we're talking about widespread indoctrination from the education system, then maybe there's a reason.
I'm afraid to say, Jeremy, if you don't challenge lies and you don't challenge ignorance, and I'm afraid, my degrees are in history, I'm constantly coming across teachers who do not understand history. Yeah. They only did Hitler and the Nazis for A-level. Their degree courses were very narrow. My course, and I was lucky enough to go to Oxford, we did everything from the Romans up to the Nazis, and you were tested on that. So we knew our history. The fact of life is most of our children are taught mythology, they're taught propaganda, And I'm afraid to say we need to hold these people to account. The good news, by the way, is if you look at the next generation after Generation Z, Generation Alpha, they're up for a fight. They're also more conservative than you and I are, with a small c.
Well, my 15-year-old son's more of a conservative than I am, and that's a genuine fact.
So these are the people that are going to come along and give Generation Z what for. But we've got to get back to evidence-based things. Look, if we're talking about people, I mean, you know, we saw that the Prime Minister had a sort of an AIDS test, an HIV test today. I bet he had a pregnancy test as well, the way the NHS is going.
Hey, listen, after today's news, it's Llamageddon in the NHS. The new health minister thinks it's all right to identify... Actually, I'll take your comment on this. It's OK to identify as a llama, and the new health secretary, the new health minister, Ashley Dalton, suggests that biological women can have a penis. Last word from you on that, Rear Admiral Chris Parry.
Well, I've got Welsh heritage. I don't want to mix up sheep and llamas and things like that. But the fact of life is, if that's the world we're in now, no wonder our kids don't understand their history and are not proud of their country. For goodness sake.
That's why we've a job to do, Chris. That's why we've a job to do, genuinely. I love having you on, my friend. Thank you so much indeed.